Hello and welcome back to the Air Armoury. I'm JRH and today I'm going to be talking about airgun law. Wait, haven't I already done this one? So this is a follow-up or a part 2 to the Air Armoury video on airgun law, which I'll put a link to in the description below. Now that video has had a really good response, and at the time of filming this, that video has got over 7,000 views with a number of comments and questions. Some people were just seeking clarification, whereas other people asked some really good questions relating to aspects of the law that I hadn't even considered when I made the first video. So what I thought I'd do in this video is basically answer all those questions. Now some of them I have already answered in the comments below, other ones I haven't got round to yet, but I thought by giving slightly more in-depth answers in the video it was a better way for more people to be able to access that information. Now because there are, I had to look a few things up and there are sections of legislation to remember, I have written all the questions down and done some semi-pre-prepared answers. And as with the first video, I feel obliged to put in a brief legal disclaimer, but to save myself time, I thought I'd just put in the same clip as in the first video. Whilst I do have a law degree and I work within the criminal justice system, I'm not a solicitor or a police officer or anything, so I'm not trained or qualified to give out legal advice. So the information contained within this video should just be treated as a guide to the legal position regarding air guns at the current time in England and Wales. So therefore I cannot and will not be held liable for any legal infringements resulting from people watching this video, so you need to do your own checks to make sure you're complying with the law. Now I've tried to group related questions together to give the video some kind of structure, and first of all a few questions about different countries and jurisdictions. Fake Person asks, is the law the same in Wales? Yes, it is. England and Wales share the same legal system, both in terms of legislation and case law, so all the laws covering England also cover Wales, although that isn't the same as Northern Ireland or Scotland. Niamh Hawkins via Facebook asks, what is the law in Northern Ireland? Now in Northern Ireland the principal piece of legislation is the Firearms Northern Ireland Order 2004. Under that law, any airgun that produces a power of over 1 joule, which works out about 0.74 foot-pounds, requires a certificate or a firearms licence. Now I don't know too much about Northern Ireland law, but from what I've read it seems to suggest that a firearms certificate is maybe slightly easier to obtain in Northern Ireland than it is in England and Wales. N Tan says, can you please do an airgun law video about Scotland? Now, like with Northern Ireland, Scotland has different laws to England and Wales, and the reason that N Tan asks this is in relation to the new law that's due to come into force later in the year in Scotland, which I'm sure many of you will be aware of. So that is what I'm going to cover mainly in this answer. Now, there's a new piece of legislation coming into force in Scotland called the Air Weapon and Licensing Act Scotland 2015. And under that it will mean that as of the 31st of December 2016 it will be an offence for anyone to use, possess, purchase or acquire an airgun in Scotland without holding an airgun licence. And that has been introduced by the Scottish Government to try and prevent the misuse of airguns. Now this is not the same as a full Section 1 firearms certificate, as it only covers airguns with a power over 1 joule or 0.74 foot-pounds, but below 12 foot-pounds for a rifle or 6 foot-pounds for a pistol. This does however also include sound suppressors. Now the licensing period began on the 1st of July 2016 and will run until the 31st December 2016, and during this time you must either obtain a licence, sell your airguns or hand them into the police, and if you don't take any of those courses of actions you could receive a fine or imprisonment of up to 2 years. Now to obtain a licence, which is going to be called an air weapon certificate, there's a 4-part test. The person applying for it must be fit to be entrusted with an air weapon, not prohibited from possessing an air weapon under the Firearms Act, Section 21, have a good reason for using, possessing, purchasing or acquiring an air weapon, and in all circumstances can be permitted to possess an air weapon without danger to the public safety or to the peace. Now, a lot of those are relatively straightforward. I think the main stumbling block for people here is going to be the good reason test. Whilst all cases will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, good reasons will include sporting purposes, including the shooting of appropriate live quarry, vermin and pest control, and target shooting on private land or an approved air weapon club. It does look like, though, evidence will be required to support your good reason. And I'll put a couple of links in the description below if people want to read up further about that. I suppose the change in Scottish law raises the inevitable question of, if it's happening in Scotland, will it happen in England next? Honestly, I have no idea. As far as I'm aware, there are no current plans to introduce such a law here, and I'd like to think that because air weapon sales were restricted, well, not restricted, but regulated as a result of the Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006, there won't be a further push on restrictions in the near future. That being said, though, nothing would really surprise me, and in all honesty, all it's going to take is one or two serious or high-profile crimes involving air guns, and there'll be a push to at least license them. I was speaking to a guy, though, the other day who's quite knowledgeable and very big on the air gun scene, and he's got a collection of 500 guns, but he's already started to sell them off as he's convinced that they are going to be licensed or restricted in the not too distant future. Moving on, Bullet Wave asks, so now that I'm 18, I can buy one at the gun store as long as it's in the limitations, aka 6 foot-pounds, 12 foot-pounds, etc. Yep, as long as you comply with all the relevant conditions, for example, that you don't have a criminal record that will prohibit you from owning one, or that you're not buying it for anyone under 18. Paul Jacques says, I've been an air rifle owner and user for many years and now find it difficult to get out about having lost many of the shoots I had, but would like to shoot on my own premises. Can I buy something like an Umarex Colt Special Combat Classics 177BB for use without a firearms certificate? Absolutely, Paul. Pistols like that are great for plinking, especially for use in things like gardens, and because it is under the 6 foot-pound legal limit for pistols, you can buy one without needing a firearms certificate. Sean Sim asks, but you can still buy a £135 crossbow or spear gun. Yep, that is correct. It's a bit of an anomaly, I know. Crossbows are mainly governed by the Crossbows Act 1987, and under that Act there are restrictions, such as you have to be 17 to buy one, although that has been raised to 18 under Section 44 of the Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006, and it's also illegal to hunt with them. But in terms of power, there is no upper limit to the power for crossbows, so you can quite happily obtain a crossbow with a power of 100 plus foot-pounds without without needing a firearms certificate. With regard to spear guns, I don't know a massive amount about the legality of them, other than that they are covered by different laws than air guns. As far as I'm aware, there's no legal limit. What I do know, though, is that under Section 2.2 of the Firearms Dangerous Air Weapons Amendment Rules 1993, that air gun laws do not apply to an air weapon which is designed for use only when submerged in water. Harrier331 asks, is it legal to build an air rifle privately for personal use, given that it is sub 12 foot-pounds, of course? I could not find any specific legislation on this matter. What is also confusing to me is what is classified as a rifle/pistol. Now, two very good questions. I'll answer them separately. First of all, building an air rifle. I've done quite a lot of research on this myself recently, as I'm currently building one, and that will feature in a couple of upcoming videos, and I do know other people who have made them. I too couldn't find any legislation on the matter, but in the absence of any specific legislation, reading between the lines and interpreting the existing legislation of what there is out there, I can't find anything that would prevent you from building one, as long as you comply with the legal requirements, such as the 12 foot-pound legal limit. One key point to mention there, though, which you did say in your question, is in regard to building it privately for personal use. If this wasn't the case, it would be a different situation, as under Section 3.1a of the Firearms Act 1968, it states that a person commits an offence if, by way of trade or business, he manufactures, sells, transfers, repairs, tests or proves any firearms or ammunition to which Section 1 of this Act applies without being registered under this Act as a firearms dealer. So the second part of your question, what is classified as a rifle or a pistol? Obviously there's a big difference in relation to power, with the legal limit for a pistol being 6 foot-pounds, and that doubling to 12 foot-pounds for a rifle. But what legally is the difference? Under Section 1(2) of the Firearms Amendment Act 1997, that essentially defines a pistol as any firearm which either has a barrel less than 30 centimetres in length or is less than 60 centimetres in length overall, other than an air weapon, a small caliber pistol, a muzzle-loaded gun, or a firearm designed as signalling apparatus. Now I know that definition does expressly exclude air guns, but a combination of other legislation reveal that that exemption only refers to air guns which are not considered to be specially dangerous. And what is specially dangerous, I hear you ask? Anything over 6 foot-pounds. Dave Scorpion asks, when you say sub 12 foot-pound, is a rifle rated as 12 foot-pound classed as sub 12 foot-pounds, or does it require an FAC? Also, would the foot-pound output be dependent on the weight of the pellet? Again, I'll split your question into two parts. Firstly, Section 2 of the Firearms Dangerous Air Weapons Rules 1969, as amended in 1993, state that these rules apply to an air weapon, that is to say an air rifle, air gun or air pistol, which is capable of discharging a missile so that the missile, on being discharged from the muzzle of the weapon, has a kinetic energy in excess of, in the case of an air pistol, 6 foot-pounds, or in the case of an air weapon other than an air pistol, of 12 foot-pounds. Therefore, a 12 foot-pound rifle probably would need a firearms certificate, but an 11.991 wouldn't. Now, lots of guns that are advertised or sold as 12 foot-pounds or up to 12 foot-pounds, in reality that probably means that they are just maximum power. I'm sure if you ran a few pellets and one over a chronograph, it would probably actually come in at very slightly under 12 foot-pounds. In England and Wales, you cannot buy or sell a 12 foot-pound gun just over the counter without a firearms certificate. So all air guns for sale in this country will be below that limit. Even guns that are made abroad with a higher power and then imported will be tuned down so they still comply with our laws. For example, I have here my Remington Express box. You can see that in a number of places on here it says UK spec, as it's been tuned down so it only gets 800 feet per second, whereas out the factory it was 1,000 feet per second. With regard to the pellet weight, yes, it does have an impact on the foot-pound output, but it shouldn't have too much of a difference, as the two variables that you multiply together to get the power are the speed of the pellet and the weight of the pellet, and they do have a direct correlation. So the heavier the pellet, the slower it's going to be moving. For example, if a gun fires an 8-grain pellet at 800 feet per second, it'll have a power of 11.37 foot-pounds, but if you increase that to say a 9-grain pellet, the feet per second is going to be slower, as it can't be pushed out the barrel as quickly. Let's say that goes down to 750 feet per second, that would result in a power of 11.24 foot-pounds, so not a massive amount of difference. Some gun and pellet combinations will create bigger differences than others, so what you really need to do is just test a combination with your gun to check that you're getting maximum possible power but without going over the legal limit. 8 George asks, can you hunt, say, rabbits or pigeons on common land like Dartmoor? No, I'm afraid not. You can only hunt on land where you have the express permission of the landowner. Whilst people do have some rights over common land, one that people often think of is the right to graze animals, it's still owned by someone, whether that be the council, a trust or any other third party, so you would still need their permission to do that. And I'm pretty sure common land as well would also be deemed to be a public place, so if you hunted on it with an air rifle you would be committing a serious criminal offence. Lastly, Harry Webb 46 says, UK airgun law is a total ass, why so complex? The law surrounding air guns and their use is very complicated. That is the nature of a legal system, especially our own. UK airgun law though is particularly complicated because it's governed by numerous different areas of law, because they're partly covered by the laws of true firearms, such as the Firearms Act 1968, but also their own laws, such as the Firearms Dangerous Air Weapons Rules. These pieces of legislation then become outdated, so they're then amended versions of the acts, and the shooting sports also cross over into other areas of law, for example being covered by things like the Wildlife and Countryside Act in relation to hunting. Then on top of that, the courts make decisions based on things like how to interpret the legislation, which also adds to the confusion. The law is a real quagmire, and whilst I'd like it all to be nicely tidied up into one piece of legislation, I can't see it happening anytime soon. And as a result, it makes it very difficult to find out about the legislation, and which has a knock-on effect that makes people's ability to comply with it even more difficult. And it's for that reason that I've now made 2 videos trying to explain the UK airgun law in England and Wales. So I have something related but slightly lighter to finish the video with quickly. Now, I was flicking through some old airgun magazines the other day, and in the November 1983 edition of Airgun World, I came across a 3-page section on airgun law entitled Learn Your Laws. Now, obviously the information is outdated, with a number of key pieces of legislation having been enacted since then, such as the Firearms Amendment Act 1997 and the Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006, but the information is not as outdated as the terribly staged photos and the way the article is written. For example, perhaps we're not all budding Perry Masons on airgun regulations, but most of us are confident that we are not so ignorant or so foolish to step out of line with our local constabulary. Now, it's presented in a question and answer format. For example, this photo of the young lad down here, who's clearly borrowed his dad's briefcase, is accompanied by the question, Jonathan is taking an air pistol to a friend's house. It's not loaded and is secure in the case. Jonathan will not open the case until he's finished his journey. Is this within the law? Put your answers in the comments below. I hope you found this video informative and that it's clarified a few things and answered your questions satisfactorily. Please keep continuing to post comments and questions below, and I will try and respond to all of them, and if there is enough I will compile them into another Q&A video like this one. So thanks for watching, be sure to like, comment and subscribe to the Air Armoury, and until next time, keep your arms in the air.